The account didn't vanish all at once. It thinned. That's how I remember it now, like breath fogging a mirror and then clearing before I could say anything useful. I was standing in the kitchen when I saw the number, my phone warm in my palm, the sink running because I'd forgotten why I'd turned it on. The house was doing its normal, loyal sounds, refrigerator hum, pipes clicking, a neighbor's car door closing somewhere down the street, everything intact, everything convincing. I refreshed the page because that's what you do when something feels wrong but polite. The number stayed where it was, smaller than it had been, not small enough to trigger alarms, just less. I told myself it was timing, settlement lag, market noise, the stories we tell ourselves when we love the person who shares our bed. I dried my hands and wiped the corner, careful with the corners. When she came in, I didn't look up right away. I asked about her day. She asked about mine. We exchanged facts the way married people do, useful, bloodless facts, and none of them included the number. That night, when we slept, I lay awake thinking about the quiet ways money moves when it thinks no one is watching. I thought about the word partnership, how it sounds like a promise but behaves more like a suggestion. We agreed early on not to talk about money the way other couples did. It wasn't avoidance, we told ourselves. It was respect, independence, clean lines. I had my accounts, she had hers. We shared the bills and the groceries and the holidays. The rest stayed tidy, tucked into separate drawers. It felt modern, mature, a way of loving without crowding. When the opportunity came, the private fund, pitched by a friend of a friend, the kind that whispers instead of shouts, I didn't tell her right away. Not because I was hiding it, I said to myself, but because I was protecting the calm. The prospectus was dense and confident. The returns were conservative on paper, ambitious between the lines. I told myself I'd bring it up once it was settled, once it had proven itself worthy of the dinner table. She did the same, I learned later. Different vehicle, different language, same instinct. Quiet felt like kindness. Our days had a rhythm that made secrecy easy. Mornings staggered, evenings predictable. We spoke about work, about plans, about the small negotiations of shared life. We didn't lie, we simply selected. When she mentioned a meeting, I didn't ask which one. When I mentioned paperwork, she didn't ask where it led. We trusted the shape of each other's intentions more than the details. The fund sent updates monthly, clean emails with reassuring fonts, percentages that moved the right direction. I archived them like keepsakes. On nights when she fell asleep before me, I scrolled through the numbers and felt useful. I imagined the future absorbing these decisions quietly, like roots finding water underground. The first adjustment came in late spring. A reallocation. Temporary. Language that soothed rather than explained. I told myself I'd tell her if it changed again. I told myself that often. Summer arrived with heat that flattened everything. The updates kept coming, but the tone shifted. Still calm, still professional, just thinner. Like a voice speaking through a wall. I noticed myself waiting for the emails the way you wait for a delayed train, checking the clock, pretending not to care. Around the same time, she grew meticulous. Not anxious, just precise. Receipts photographed, spreadsheets tightened. She smiled when she showed me a new budgeting app, proud of the interface, the way it made control feel friendly. I complimented her discipline. I didn't ask why it mattered now. The night I refreshed the account in the kitchen, I told myself it was nothing. I watched the sink overflow before I turned it off. I slept badly. In the morning, she kissed me longer than usual and said she'd be late. The fund stopped sending updates. Not abruptly. They stretched the interval, a week, then two. I drafted emails and didn't send them. I rehearsed explanations that cast me as patient, informed, reasonable. I told myself that panic is contagious, and I was being responsible by containing it. When I finally called, the line was answered by someone who spoke in complete sentences that went nowhere. Review. Process. Standard procedure. I wrote the words down, the way you do when you think documentation is a form of leverage. That evening, she brought up a renovation idea. A future expense. I nodded too quickly. I heard myself say we were fine. The word landed between us and stayed there, obedient. The disappearance didn't announce itself. It accumulated. Fees, holds, A notice that looked like all the others but asked for patience in a way that felt personal. I checked the balance again and again, as if repetition could restore weight to a number. When I finally told her, carefully, late, with a preface that tried to soften the floor, she didn't raise her voice. She listened. She asked a few questions. She said we'd figure it out. And she told me about hers. Different fund. Different friend of a friend. Same vocabulary of reassurance. She hadn't mentioned it because she didn't want to worry me. She showed me the app. The line where the number used to be. Gone. We sat at the table with our phones face down, like they were misbehaving children. The house kept its sounds. Nothing collapsed. That was the cruel part. We compared timelines and discovered how neatly they overlapped. Two people making the same choice in parallel, convinced they were preserving something by keeping it quiet. There were calls after that. Forms. Meetings where faces nodded sympathetically and hands slid papers across polished surfaces. The language was impeccable. Everyone understood our concern. Everyone required time. I learned how much comfort there is in procedure when responsibility is diffuse. We didn't accuse each other. That would have been simpler. Instead, we apologized in ways that didn't quite connect. We reassured. We planned contingencies. We became very good at the present tense. But, at night, I lay awake listening to her breathe and thought about the way love can make you believe that silence is neutral, that a mission is a kind of care. I thought about partnership, how it depends not on sharing everything, but on agreeing what counts as shared. We had agreed without speaking. We had trusted the quiet. The funds are still under review. That phrase has lost its meaning. The marriage is still intact. That phrase hasn't. We move through our days with competence and courtesy. We talk about groceries and vacations that may or may not happen. Sometimes we laugh at the same thing, and it feels real. But there is a space between us now, shaped like a number that used to exist. Not debt, not blame, absence. And every time a form asks for assets, I feel the weight of what we chose not to say, and how easily the world learned to take advantage of that choice.